Hi, I'm Randall Stamen. I'm a judge with the Riverside Superior Court. Today, I have the honor of speaking with one of the most distinguished attorneys to ever practice law in the county of Riverside, Terry Bridges. Terry began practicing in Riverside County in 1965. His bar number is 37819. Terry served as the president of the Riverside County Bar Association in 1987 and 1989 for one term. His accomplishments and contributions to both the legal community in the county, as well as the county itself, or the community itself, are too many to list. I've picked just a few out that I thought were incredibly interesting. In 1992, Terry testified before the United States House of Representatives Judiciary Subcommittee on Intellectual Property and Judicial Administration, as part of a successful team from the Inland Empire that had a federal court situated in Riverside. Terry testified before the subcommittee that individuals from Riverside and San Bernardino counties were being denied access to the federal courts because of the time it took them and their attorneys to travel all the way to Orange County and to Los Angeles County to make very simple court appearances. And as part of that testimony, it was noted, and individuals talked about the fact that it would take hours and hours to get to the courts. And as a result of that very successful testimony, Riverside did go ahead and get a federal court in downtown Riverside. Terry was a member of U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer's Judiciary Advisory Committee. He authored and spoke to both the California State Bar, Riverside County Bar Association, many law schools on the topics of mediating and on maintaining and promoting the civility within the practice of law. And finally, Terry was a member of the State Bar Committee, which drafted this California-approved jury instructions, otherwise known as Casey to many of us. Terry, welcome back to Department 1 of the Riverside Superior Court.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's just a wonderful privilege to be, and a happy time to be in this courtroom. I have so many happy memories, and I'm so overjoyed and honored by the request to share some of my memories and my activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I might, before I begin.
Please.
I've had a wonderful life in and out of the law. I'd like to dedicate these remarks to some of the people who've meant the most to me. My father, my super sister, Art Littleworth, who was a mentor and a friend for 60 years, who died last week. And to the happiest part of my life, Judy Gillespie. Thank you.
Terry, thank you. All of us have become attorneys for a number of reasons, and we're all from very different backgrounds. I'd like to find out a little bit about your background and what led you to law.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and I always knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I remember one time I went to St. Francis, just up the street, and a nun came over. I was about 8, and she said, "Terry boy, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be?" She was hoping that I would say a priest, but I said, "I want to be a courtroom lawyer." So from that young age, I knew there was something about the law and the trial of law that attached me to it, and I never wavered from that.
Terry, so you're from Riverside then?
I was born in Riverside. When I was born in 1940, I'll do the math for you, I'm 81. I was born just a mile or so from this courthouse. At that time, it was a village of 10,000 people. Everyone knew one another. It was just a happy, civil, wonderful town. And I knew that there was something special about this town and its smallness that drew me back to practice in that same environment. Now, while there were very many more people when I came back, we never lost that feeling, and I hope it still exists today, of a small town community. A community where you know other people, you talk with other people, you respect other people, and you have fun and laughter with other people in the bar.
You mentioned coming back. Where did you come back from?
I came back from law school. I went away was educated all from kindergarten to high school at St. Francis. I then went away to the University of Santa Clara. I then went to USC Law School and then came back directly here. I interviewed only with two firms, Reed and Hillier and Best Krieger. That shows how much I knew I wanted to be here, and I wanted to be with a firm of distinction.
What made you come back to Riverside?
The small community feeling, the feeling that has never been lost. You know people, people know you. You can trust people or not. Fortunately for here, it's the former. They can trust you. You can call up an adversary and talk with them. You can see them, you can have coffee. That was a big thing of me in my practice. So I wanted to come back for that small community feeling. That is best exemplified by the bar and the Inn of Court.
You mentioned two firms that you came back to. Did you end up with a firm, or did you go ahead and start your own practice right off the bat?
No, I was privileged to be with Best and Krieger for 14 years. And then I started out on my own. I had my own firms at the time. I hired my own people. We had a wonderful, convivial, small group of practitioners. And we all adhered to the same sense of values.
At some point in time, you did go ahead and open your own firm though, right?
Yes, after 14 years with Best and Krieger.
When you opened your own firm, after a little bit, did you ever figure out the pros and cons? What you liked about it, maybe didn't like?
You know, Your Honor, I don't think there were things that I didn't like. Every day there are challenges. But the predominating thing for me was the joy of it, of being with my own firm. I could hire my own people, as I said. I had my own philosophy. The philosophy was to take the high road no matter what. I deputized everyone who worked with me. They worked with me, not for me. And I told them if they ever see me do anything that is untoward, that is uncivil, that is unprofessional, I want to know. I asked them each, any assistant, to read carefully my briefs and my letters to make sure that there was a sense of civility. And if there was ever the contrary, they were to contact me and we would never send that. Now, that's not to say that I didn't type or prepare what I called letters to relieve you. I would write these flaming letters of anger, but I would put them on my desk. I would look at them in the morning. I would never, ever send them, but it helped me get rid of that particular issue.
With regard to your legal involvement, so after a few years, or at some point, maybe right off the bat, did you become involved in the local legal community?
I did, right off the bat. And that comes from my strong feeling that we as professionals have an obligation to give back to our profession, to enhance it, to make it better, to become involved in it and seriously involved in it. So I became involved in the RCBA as soon as possible. The barristers were not formed then, but they were formed a little bit later, and then I joined them.
How did you find time for that? And that's a difficult thing to do when you're inexperienced or perhaps just starting out as an attorney.
I disciplined myself. I knew I had the obligation to it, and so I joined and I set dates for me to do things. I joined various individual committees. We had timelines to report, so I was sort of forced to become involved in that respect. Every month we would have our meetings. I would always attend those. And so, in addition to the sense of obligation, I had that calendar set for me, either internally or outside by the organizations in which I was involved.
Is there any one memory that sticks out in your mind from your legal involvement, perhaps in the legal community with the Bar Association or some other group?
I guess it's the transition From only a few members, when I joined, it was under 90. There were only under 90 attorneys in the county. And then seeing the change over the years, what I admired the most and what I admired the least when I joined, it was an old men, all white community. We had one female practitioner in Banning, I think it was. She specialized in probate. But other than that, we had no other women, females, and we had no person of color. That bothered me from the beginning. I was aware of that. And I hoped I could do whatever I could do individually to change that. Whether it be in hiring women, people of color in my firm, or voicing my concerns and thoughts to the bar in general.
Are you able to tell us just a little bit about how did that change over time? How did the makeup of the bar or the legal community itself change?
Just like society, it changed almost proportionally, I would think. And so very, very slowly, we started to obtain the value and the benefit of women, females, and of people of color. But it was too slow.
At one point, as a result of your legal involvement, and as the bar was changing, you became the president of the bar, the Riverside County Bar Association. I believe it was 1987, correct?
It was.
Can you tell us a little bit about your term, experience, maybe some of your fond memories?
They were all fond memories, and the involvement in the community added to that fondness. When I ascended to the presidency, we were a sort of a very marginal operation. We didn't have a building. We didn't have the real quality staff that we have now. People did not seem to respond to each other. There wasn't a camaraderie within the bar because we didn't have all of those meetings, subcommittees, etc. So over time, that changed. The bar grew. And I think and I believe we reflected the growth of the community in and of itself.
When you were practicing and juggling those responsibilities as a bar president, what type of practice did you have?
I started out as a trial lawyer. That's all I ever wanted to be, as I told you from that vignette a minute ago. I tried my first jury trial 2.5 weeks after I was sworn in. I tried a lot of cases, I think 4 jury trials the first year. So that was a wonderful, wonderful, happy point for me. Fulfilling what I always wanted to do as a trial lawyer and seeing what I could do to give back to the community of trial lawyers, some thoughts, some seminars, some sharing of mistakes that I have made with them and how we could be better as a trial bar.
You bring up a topic, I'm hesitant to ask about it, but you've mentioned mistakes. Do you have any one mistake, and I'll put this very carefully, that maybe we can all learn from?
Before I retired, one of the last speeches I gave was entitled, "The 43 Worst Mistakes I Ever Made in the Courtroom." We scheduled it for 3 hours. I still didn't finish. I never had that many people listen to a speech of mine. They were counting how many, was it 41, 42, 43? And so yes, I had a tremendous amount of mistakes in the courtroom. A lot of them descended from being young, from being aggressive, from at the very beginning thinking the way to try a case was very aggressive. The opponents I had that first year were extremely aggressive. Sadly, I didn't have a mentor. And so I felt that's the way to practice. So over the years, I came up with a lot of things based upon my mistakes of what not to do. Let me share a few.
Please.
And I just happen to have some. The first thing is to realize, I think, as lawyers, trial or not, that our obligation is to resolve disputes between clients, not to gain from them, not to put our clients through the emotional travail of a litigation, and not to benefit financially from our clients' problems. So at an early date, I discovered I need to do what I can to resolve things. I had a number of ways to do that. And over the years, I developed what I called the cappuccino conference. Whenever I had a new case assigned to me, I would call opposing counsel and say something like this: "Good morning, I'm Terry Bridges. I will have the pleasure of working with you on this particular case." I would ask them if I could come to their office to share with them my feelings and my analysis of the case and share with them some documents. You're going to have to do this sooner or later. My thought was, why not do it right now? And I would go to their office wherever it was. I went out of state more than a few times to do this. I would meet them, and before I came, I would ask if they liked espresso. What's their coffee drink? They would tell me. I would bring it with me to their office. It sort of broke the ice. Pursuant to our discussion, I would be able to listen to their client, sort of size that client up, see what the jury would think of that client, and see what I felt of that client. And then I would share with them my analysis of the case. And as I said, share some of the key documents. Again, you're going to have to do it sooner or later. Why not do it now? We then, instead of saying counsel or looking at me as some satanic representative of a corporate defendant, we knew each other. Whenever we would have a motion in court, I would meet that opposing counsel before court. We would always continue with the tradition of our cappuccino after court. And I can't tell you how that increased the ability to work with opposing counsel. Things like, "Terry, I'd like this." The answer would be or should be, "I'll get it to you by X." And I could reciprocate. We saved so much time that way. And we continued on a civil pathway. And I'm proud to say, Your Honor, that several of those, or a number of those cappuccino conferences resulted in settlements on the spot. No case was too complicated for that. I defended a number of class actions, and even with the class actions, I would utilize my cappuccino conference. And as a result of that cappuccino conference and follow up with 1 or 2 sessions, we settled 4 or 5 class actions immediately without the tremendous time and expense to the client.
So I knew you were famous for your coffee sessions, and I think I may have observed 1 or 2 a time. I did not know that you had named them the cappuccino, okay?
I did.
And they were effective.
I like the alliteration of it, cappuccino conference. They were very effective. And again, we started off as colleagues, not as adversaries. And we maintained that. And I pledged that at that conference. I will be as civil, I will be as cooperative as possible. And I know that you will be the same. And we set that tone.
And you believe that's just as important today as it was a few years ago?
Your Honor, I believe it's more important because the complexity of litigation, the cost of litigation, the emotional toll of litigation dictates that we do everything we can to reach a resolution. That, as I say, and I repeat, that is our highest duty as a trial lawyer, to resolve and not to build problems.
We've talked about your involvement in the legal community and about your unique manner in going about settling cases. Do you have one case during your career, or one person, one litigant, someone that you represented, that you truly remember?
I'll never forget it.
Please.
I was involved in a case of some substance. A lot was at stake. And I had a wonderful counsel on the other side. I knew at the very beginning we were going to have to try that case. So I showed up for trial. My opposing counsel introduced me to, "Terry, this is John Barnett. He's going to try the case." John Barnett was a famous trial lawyer in Orange County. I was supposed to, I guess, crumble. Sadly, I didn't know who John Barnett was, so I introduced myself to him and said, let's go down for some coffee, and just to chat with each other. We tried the case, and unfortunately, I think it took 3+ weeks. It was hung. So we had to come back and retry it. We retried it in front of the same judge, Bob Jameson. I loved that judge. I loved him. At the end of the 3rd week, he was coughing on the bench. He called us up almost at the end of the day. He said, counsel, I need to see you. We got up to the bench. He said, gentlemen, I can't go through tomorrow. I've got this allergy. And I don't know what possessed me, but I said, that's okay, Your Honor. We can try the case ourselves without a judge. And he said, you know, I know you can. He gave us his home phone. We tried the case. Nobody went anywhere near close to an objection. We got through the day without any problem, didn't have to call him. I will never forget the trust that that judge instilled in me or gave to me. I will never forget my opposing counsel, John Barnett, participating in that. I will never forget the joy of feeling, wow, I really have the respect of opposing counsel and the judge. And you know what? When we walked away, the courtroom personnel clapped. They'd never seen anything like that. And they were appreciative of the trust the judge instilled in us.
I've never heard of anything like that. That's an amazing story.
I've given a number of talks to judges' conventions. They've never heard of it. And I see the heads going back. This never happened. This cannot happen. But it did. And I will never, ever forget it.
Once again, a truly amazing story. Let me ask another question about something you mentioned a little bit earlier. You mentioned mentors. Do you have any one mentor that you feel free or comfortable talking about?
Of course. And that was a sad part of my life. I wanted to have a mentor. And at my firm, they never had mentors at Best & Krieger. But Art Littleworth served as a de facto mentor. I admired him. He became my friend. I did the best work I ever could do to please him. I'll never forget how, when I went to court with him, I would pretend I was arguing instead of him. I would write down the arguments, and I'd say, that's pretty good. If I wrote down 10, he'd have 20. It was just an amazing relationship. I've never forgotten the joy I had and the friendship I had with Art. I was able to see him twice shortly before he died last week. And those moments with him, we exchanged some special hugs by hands. I'll never forget that. There was another person who was an informal mentor to me, and that was Enos Reed. I was defending a case. Enos was the plaintiff's counsel. Again, it was a matter of some substance. I stood back and I looked at him. There was an aura of unbelievable perfection by Enos Reed. I learned what to do and what not to do, how to be kind, how to be sensitive, how to be respectful of the client, how to give yourself a professional appearance, as Enos did. And I never, ever forgot the lessons that I learned just by watching him and saying, Terry, this is how you should act. I was really happy. I sponsored at University of Santa Clara Law School, I sponsored a program every year for 5 years. We would bring in really well-known attorneys from across the nation, and they would talk about ethics and civility and professionalism. And the professors signed off on this as well. One time, I would always get to give the keynote address because I was funding this. So I gave a keynote address about the importance of Enos Reed in my life. It was videoed. 3 weeks later, he died. And I was able to give that video to his wife and family. I felt so happy about that. In part, I'm saying, thank you, family, for the joy and for the professional approach that I learned from Enos.
I have to ask you a personal question then. Right now, we're in Department 1 of the Historic Courthouse. It's an amazing courtroom. You've been in it many times before today.
Yes.
Right outside the door, there's a statue of Enos Reed. And he has his glasses in his hand. He's holding them out. Tell me more about that.
People always contended that he was doing that for effect, but it was a habit of his. And he had a sight problem, so when he needed his glasses, he put them on. When he didn't need them, he took them off. There was no phoniness to it. There wasn't a phony bone in Enos's body. He was the consummate gentleman. You'll notice that there is a rope around his. I would always go before I ever entered Department 1, I would touch his feet, just as, hi Enos, thank you. Maybe that's why you have a rope around it. He meant that much to me, and I've never, ever forgotten him.
And we hadn't talked about that question beforehand, and that was one of my own. I had heard various stories about it. I'd never observed you out there, though, and I just had to ask that question.
And when I came in today, my heart leapt seeing Enos and seeing John Gabbert.
Let me transition just a little bit. We've talked about professionalism and your career in law and how you made your way back to Riverside. Tell me a little bit about your community involvement or the importance, whether you believe it's not important or important, of attorneys, whatever stage they be at, being involved in the community.
I have a strong feeling that as professionals, as lawyers, we owe a duty to our profession, but equally important, we owe a duty to our community. We owe a duty to enhance both our profession and our community. It's difficult because of the time, the minimum billable hour monster, but it's an obligation, and we have to do it. And so I became involved in a lot of legal community activities. I'm very proud of that. I gained a lot from that. I did not, and I regretfully say, have as many community activities as I wish I could. I became very involved in school matters. I handled a couple of campaigns for school board. One day, the head of the school board called me up and said, Terry, would you serve as the chair of a bond issue? I think I was 4 years out. I knew that was probably his 50th call because no one was going to say that I would do that. In fact, I asked him, how many calls have you made before? There was a problem to it too. The teachers union decided for that particular election, they were going to sit it out instead of help. So it looked like we had no hope. I stopped my practice. For 30 days, I gave almost 40 speeches. I stopped my practice with the blessing of Art Littleworth, who was on the school board and had done so much for the school. I was down there for the counting of the votes. We won by 13 votes, and I was so happy that I was able to give back to the community in that respect. I was also involved in PTAs. I was the president of the PTA from middle school for my children, for high school for my children, and for my daughter at Scripps College. So I became involved in giving back. I became very involved in the educational process, but I was able to give back a lot in that respect as well. While I had a lot of joy in a number of community activities as a lawyer, professional activities, that's a regret of mine, Your Honor, that I didn't do more for the community.
You were juggling a lot at that point in time.
A tremendous amount.
Did your practice?
I only had a couple of people in my firm. I had a paraprofessional. I had 2 attorneys, and I had several secretaries. We were a really good team, and we were with each other for a long time, so we knew what the other one needed, and we did that. It works for those who are interested in a small practice. It was the happiest part of my life. I could control, as I said before, the quality of our practice, the professionalism of our practice, the obligation of the members of my firm that we need to step up and take that extra step to be the best professionals we can. And that gave me a lot of joy when I saw that happen.
Do you feel that you successfully juggled all those?
No, it's impossible to do that. I tried my best. And I think that's the best I can say and the best feeling I can say about myself. I did my best in a lot of things, particularly bar associations. I was on a number of committees in San Francisco where I'd have to go from time to time. The Casey Commission. The commission that meant the most to me was the Commission on Civility, where we wrote the rules of civility. Please read those, folks, time and time again. That was a joy for me. But I always found the time was made available. There was never a time that I asked an opposing counsel, I've got a commission meeting tomorrow or for the next 4 days. Can you adjust? Can we work together on that? Answer, yes. Your Honor, I'm not going to be able to be here on that date. I have a commission meeting. All right, Mr. Bridges, can you appear on X date? Interesting. If you give of yourself, you get back. And I felt that opposing counsel and the judges respected that and went along with that. And that meant a lot to me. If they hadn't have done that, I'm not sure I could have done the things I did, Your Honor.
I don't think any of us feel that we're successfully juggling it all. Do you have any words of advice for your colleagues on that? How to go about trying to juggle it all?
Do your best. But I think a commitment comes first. And that commitment comes from the heart. I have an obligation. It's not something I want to do. It's something I must do. And I will get a lot out of it. I will give back to the community. I will give back to my profession. And it makes me happy. So it works both ways. I set a lot of calendars. As I said earlier, I had to be here on this day for this committee meeting, for that committee meeting. And it all worked out. It all worked out. It was difficult. But one should never shy away from community involvement or professional involvement with the excuse, and I say that intentionally, I'm too busy.
How do you work your family, your health, your outside interest into that picture?
With difficulty. And as I honestly look back at it, I could have been more of an engaged father. I was engaged, and I think I gave an excuse to myself. Yes, I'm at every game, I'm doing this, I'm at the PTA, I'm doing that. We're going here, we're going there. But I could have done much more. I could have done much more. And I don't think I examined my conscience enough, and I think I fell into the trap of client first. You've got deadlines to meet, you've got appearances to make, you've got to meet this deadline, you've got to answer these discovery documents. And I fell prey to that. I've talked to my children about that, and happily, they're saying, particularly my son, no, Dad, everything was fine. We understood. Your family understands, your friends understand. And it worked out just fine.
And I think all of us share that feeling, though. If you're involved in law and probably most other careers, you're struggling to maintain that balance at any one time, and you may feel guilty that you've shorted one side as opposed to another.
Yes.
Let me ask you just a final question. Do you have any words of wisdom or parting advice for your colleagues, whether they be younger or older, experienced or less experienced?
Yes. And that comes from the 43 worst mistakes I ever made. I say now for the third time, I leave with younger attorneys this duty to be problem resolvers and not parasites to our clients' problems. I share with younger attorneys, and I plead with younger attorneys, always take the high road, no matter what. And that was very difficult at times. I ran into some extremely challenging opposing counsel. But I always kept the high road. And it made it an easier practice for me. I think it's always remember that your reputation is fragile, particularly here in Riverside. You can lose your reputation, and I'm speaking to new attorneys. You can lose your reputation with a phone call, with an ill-timed or ill-stated or ill-drafted ad hominem argument. You can lose your reputation with the judges when they see that argument. You can lose your reputation with opposing counsel when she sees and reads that argument. So it's always to take that high road no matter what. I think it also helps to be, and we've talked a lot about this, to be involved in community and professional activities. And that gives all of us the opportunity to go out of our shell and have a feeling that we are giving back. And if we're not doing that, we're not following through on our professional obligations. I would suggest to find a mentor. That was a big failure of me. I should have taken the high road and asked, as people have asked me, would you be a mentor to me? I was so honored by that. But I don't know why I never asked someone of value in this community or in my firms, please mentor me. I keep suggesting to new attorneys, to enjoy and seek out what I call illegal friends, non-lawyers. How many times have we gone to professional organizations or meetings or just community or friends? All we talk about is law. And it generally goes, let me tell you about this last case I just finished. And then it goes, without saying it, you think that's good? I'll see that and raise you this. And it just goes all night long. So I have found the joy of illegal friends. And we don't talk law, and they don't ask law. So it's very, very happy to me. I love those friends. I have committed in terms of friendship when I was with Best and Krieger. I love backpacking. For 50 years, every year I have gone backpacking. I will go back as soon as several medical issues and operations have resolved. I'll be there. I have run every day for 50 years. I have raced a 5K every month. And I involve friends with that as well. So stay away from the legal friends, find the illegal friends. And in doing that, count your family as friends. Have those discussions. Go walking. Walk up Mount Rubidoux. Do those little extra things that communicate to your family and to your friends your love of them. I had a practice, sort of like the Cappuccino Conference. I had a practice for 5 years. I would call up a hero of mine in the bar and say, may I take you to lunch? Well, they said, yes, that's nice, that's fine. These were all heroes. And I would take them to lunch and explain to them why I wanted to talk to them about how much they have meant in my life. So for 5 years I did that. And those were very happy lunches for both of us.
Chair, I'd like to ask you also, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, Your Honor, I think it's what I wish it would be, not what it is, but what I strive for. It's my wish that everyone with whom I came in contact would say, he treated me with dignity and respect. I'd like the judges to know I was really prepared, overly prepared. but that I respected them and I respected their office. And that when I came into a courtroom, it was with respect and admiration. I'd like the people who worked with me, not for me, to say I've learned something from Terry and I've learned civility from him. I'd like my opposing counsel to say he always treated me with dignity and respect. And he also had some laugh lines. We shared some laughs together. A secret, when I would walk into a new courtroom and never having seen the judge before, my test was, does she have laugh lines? And if she does, I felt this is going to be a good trial. And it was. So I'd like to have given some people some laugh lines. A sense of humor helped me so much through so many issues. And I still have hopefully retained that sense of humor today. Thank you.
Terry, I want to personally end by thanking you. I have personally, over time, tried to emulate some of your practices, not nearly as successfully as you. I also want to thank you on behalf of the Bar Association, the legal community in Riverside, as well as the citizens of Riverside. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for very openly sharing with us.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's been a great pleasure, and it's lovely to be home. Thank you.